Well, A Journey to Darfur is a documentary that everybody should see, and we encourage everyone to go out, get a copy of it, get it from your local library, buy it if you have to, get it off the web, however you can do it. I'll ask you in a minute, Nick, what your most memorable moment was, but we have a clip, and we're going to run that now, on George and his interaction with a young girl who really kind of summed up where the world was at that time.
You bet. An experience in one of the camps drove this point home for us. During the trip, George was feeling a little bit ill when a little girl asked him a tough question.
And this tiny, tiny little thing, who's probably 8 or 9, but she looked like she was 3 or 4 because she was so thin. She came up by me as I was standing there, and you know, you always had kids around you, you know, walking around. She came over, she kept pulling on my finger, and the translator was with us. And I said, "What did she say?" And he said, "She wants to know when you're going to come back, when you're going to, you know, bring help." And I was leaning over, sick and pale green, and I just sort of said, "Tell her soon," you know, like to get her away, you know. I was embarrassed by it. And then she said something, she kind of giggled and pulled my finger like that, and kept pulling on my finger. And I said, "What did she say?" And she said, "That's what you always say." And I thought, man, oh man, she's seen us before, a lot, you know. And the problem is, we show up and we get on television and we raise a lot of cane and we talk about it. And we get to the UN and they raise a lot of cane and they talk about it. And Condoleezza Rice stands up and says, "This will not stand." And 13 of the 15 members of the National Security Council stand up and say, we will not abide by this. And that little girl is still in every bit as much danger today as she was, you know, 5 months ago.
Well, Nick, that is certainly a moving experience, and that is something that will tug at everyone's heartstring, without a doubt. I'm wondering, that obviously was a memorable moment. What, for you, what were one or two of the most memorable events that took place while you were in Darfur?
It's the stories, isn't it? It's always the stories. It's the stories that eventually, if you wait long enough and if you listen carefully enough, they will tell you. The woman who had the Sophie's choice of which child to leave behind when she was running from the Janjaweed. Her 13-year-old could run faster than she, and she could carry her baby and run, but she couldn't carry her baby and her 6-year-old and run with any hope of saving herself and her child. She had to run and leave her 6-year-old behind. We all have nightmares about that kind of choice that may come to us someday. It's coming every day to the people in Darfur.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And there's so much that people can do. We who live in Kentucky, California, New York, Bolivia, Canada, wherever it may be, there's so much that we can do to get involved in this. And the United Nations is doing a lot. The Security Council is starting to move more effectively, but the UN is on the ground with their programs, many of the UN High Commission for Refugees, the World Health Organization, the UN Children's Fund. But you encountered a lot of groups over there too, the International Rescue Committee and different ones like that. What were they doing to provide assistance?
Well, they're doing all the things that would make you proud. These are very brave young Americans and and people from other parts of the world. But you'd be very proud of your kids and they're all young. They're all 25, 30 years old, under 30, most of them. And they're in isolated places and they're doing dangerous things and they're doing things that are saving people's lives right now. They're doing it with no protection. They're doing it with very little money. They're from 80 humanitarian organizations, the ones you've been contributing to all these years, CARE and Save the Children and International Rescue Committee and Samaritan's Purse and all of the others. They're spending your money very, very wisely, and I salute every one of them.
Mm-hmm. You've worked in journalism most of your life. You're a very prominent journalist, newsman, as you say. Why is it, what do you think it is? There are so many important things going on at the United Nations every day, yet the media do not seem to cover it. Now, if George Clooney is there, they come and they cover it. But there are many activities going on right now as we speak that affect our lives, as everyone in this state. What can we do to get the media more involved in covering the UN or these major issues, not the UN per se, but the issues per se?
We don't know what the UN means to the rest of the world. We have no clue. I certainly didn't. We have had some bad experiences, we believe, with the UN over the years, and therefore we have taken those and extrapolated them into something that doesn't exist, which is a kind of an international villainy. Quite the opposite is true. When we arrive in Central America, when we arrive in Africa, we find out exactly what these people are doing. They're keeping people alive, and they are giving them structure that they have no other way of getting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that till I got there, and I found those big white UN planes and those big white UN warehouses that had the life-saving food that people lined up for once a week to take home. This is an organization that has its flaws, but it's an organization that we could not do without.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely critical. It is certainly not a perfect organization, but it's one that, as you mentioned, provides a lifeline to people if they're tsunami victims or whatever it may be, or people in Darfur or people in Lebanon or wherever it might be. But they also provide basic services. The UN provides, if you look at the whole family of services, they help to move aircraft and ships and mail and weather information safely around the world. UN agencies have been combating terrorism long before we ever had 9/11. So the UN is on the ground and is providing services to us in the United States and to people all around the world that we absolutely have to have.
And one of our jobs is to help the UN do it better and make it so whatever its flaws are to help to correct them.
Mm-hmm. That's very important. It's not a perfect organization. It has improved, as we've seen over the past several years. When Kofi Annan was there, he introduced a lot of internal reforms to improve the internal management, and Ban Ki-moon, the current Secretary General, has kept the ball rolling and is doing a lot in this area, but there's always more to do, and no organization is perfect. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be the local church or a local civic club. There's always room for improvement.
I wish the people understood how important it was for those in troubled parts of what we now call the third world when they see a blue hat.
That's right, the blue helmeted peacekeeper. That's very, very true. Well, Nick Clooney, you've done a phenomenal job with this documentary. It's an outstanding documentary, and it's one, again, that I encourage everybody to get a journey to Darfur. But let me ask you in closing, and I mentioned earlier that there's more that we can do. Let me ask you, why should we, what can we do, and why should we in Kentucky or California or Florida or New York or wherever it might be, why should we focus more on the Darfurian situation and focus more on the United Nations, and to learn more about this very important organization as well as other organizations?
I can only bring it home to Darfur. It's the one that absolutely overwhelms my consciousness at the moment. And all I can say is, I love America, obviously. I love America's story. And if we do not help the people in Darfur, we are not who we think we are. We are not who we believe we are. We must help those who cannot help themselves.
Mm-hmm. Nick Clooney, thank you for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thanks, Bill.
I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on Global Connections.